What is considered a good sales closing ratio? This is a great question. We talk on this channel a lot about sales strategies and ways to get your sales up, but we probably haven't covered the closing ratio quite as much as we should. And it's actually a really important part of being able to increase your sales. So if this is something that you need, then you're in luck, because that is exactly what today's caller is asking about. I'm Amy Walker, Client Acquisition Specialist, and I help entrepreneurs and small business owners just like you be able to create consistent, predictable sales through organic marketing and scalable sales strategies.
Hi, Amy. This is Parker. I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago about increasing my closing ratio, and they didn't really say what I should be shooting for. I'm currently closing at 45%, but when my team members are closing, it drops way down to like 20%. Should I be concerned?
Okay, Parker, this is a really good question, and I'm so glad that you're bringing this up, because you're right. We do talk a lot about increasing our closing ratio, increasing, but not a lot of people will say like what you should be shooting for. And also, we need to talk about this problem of you having a higher closing ratio than the rest of your team and figure out, is it really a problem? Does it need to be addressed? So I feel like we kind of have two separate questions we need to talk about. Like, first of all, what is a good closing ratio? And then second, is it even feasible that team members can maintain the same closing ratio as the boss? So we'll talk about both of those. So I'm going to narrow down today about 5 different things that I'm going to recommend that you do in order to make sure that your close ratio is high. In order to make sure that you are getting the best closing ratio possible for your business. So paying attention to your closing ratio is going to help you with the consistent, predictable, maintainable sales. When your closing ratio is all over the place, it's not going to give you that stability that you're looking for. And it can be really, really frustrating to feel like you're living in feast or famine sales. So this is one of the most important things that you can do to create stability, is to make sure that the close ratio across the board is solid. This can also be a big frustration in a company where you do have multiple people selling like you do, Parker, because you don't want to feel that worry that if a lead goes down one channel, it's going to drop off into the void of horrible closing ratio. And yet if it goes to somebody else, it's going to be amazing. So we do need to create some standards and some just consistency here. Okay, so let's look at some facts. The best in class businesses have a 30% close ratio. Average businesses have a 20% close ratio. However, when they figure this number, they're actually figuring it after all of the leads have dropped out of the pipeline before they got to the place of offer. So this is a number that is based on bigger companies who have bigger marketing budgets, and they're running a system where they're kind of bringing people in and then moving them through their ideal sales process. Your small business numbers are going to work slightly differently, and let me tell you why. Most of us as small businesses, we need to squeeze the potential out of every single lead that comes our way. Why? Because we don't have an unlimited marketing budget. Why else? Because we don't have an unlimited amount of time to work on lead generation. So my small business owners that I work with, I'm like, let's be proactive with every single lead. Let's physically use time and energy alongside systems and processes to move people through at a much higher rate, which means that as small business owners, we are actually talking to and connecting with more of the people that the bigger business would have lost, if that makes sense. The bigger business would never have gotten on the phone with these people, whereas they are going to make their way into our sales conversations and we are going to interact with them, and that's normal with smaller businesses. So it will affect your numbers a little bit. And if you're curious, that lead attrition rate that the bigger businesses are working with is 50 to 80%. So 50 to 80% of the people, they never even got to the point of sales conversation with. So how do we adjust as smaller business owners? Number one, we sell sooner. We start proactively reaching out to try to engage our leads in a sales conversation before they might potentially be ready for it. What that means is that we're going to get more out of our leads for sure, but we're also going to have sales conversations with people who are a no for now, but not a no for good. And that's going to lower your closing ratio down just a little bit. So I am personally willing to go as low as a 20% close ratio and consider it a good closer. I don't really like to go below that. And I love when they're above that, but that's kind of like my standard. So I'm just taking a peek back at my notes here. You mentioned that your people are at a 20% close ratio, you're at 45. I wouldn't cry over that. If they can do 20% consistently, that's good enough. And we definitely want to work on getting the close ratio up, and I'll give you some tips on that here in a minute too. But I don't think it's anything to be overly concerned about. Now, here's the other reality behind this question is that most business owners are going to have a higher closing rate than anyone else in their company. Unless the business owner is really bad at sales, in which case you should expect everybody in the company to have a higher closing ratio than them. But people like buying from the business owner themselves. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, you might sell like an expert. And what that means is, and I do this, my natural way that I sell is because I can see the strategy that you need in your business. My salespeople don't have that same ability. They don't have the same natural talent and gift that I do. That when I talk to a business owner and they tell me this is where I am, this is where I want to be, like the strategy dumps into my brain in such a smooth, simple way. That's what gets people excited to buy from me. Nobody else can sell that way because they're salespeople. They're not business coaches, business strategists. They don't have my experience or my knowledge base. So if you sell like an expert and that is your sales style, nobody's going to compete with you. Like it's not possible. They can't sell that way. The second reason, even if you don't sell like an expert, even if you're just following like a basic script, people trust the business owner because they know how invested you are in doing the job right. They believe that you are the ultimate supreme expert on everything. They believe you when you give them the pricing. Whereas your other people, they might be like, well, is there any wiggle room there? No, like when it comes from you, they believe what you tell them. You also naturally have the highest level of passion. I mean, if you've got somebody else on your team who's more passionate than you, then you ought to look at your passion level because you're committed. This is your legacy. This is your livelihood. This is your family's future. This is the business that you want to pass on from generation to generation. And someday your family are all ridiculously wealthy because they ran your company. Now, I really do want to give you my 5 ways that you can work to increase your closing ratio. And I'm constantly paying attention to the closing ratio and seeing how much higher can we push it? How much higher can we push it? But before we do, I want to give you a little word of caution. If anyone watching this video is closing over 60%, it is not sustainable when you start working with higher volume. A 60% closing ratio tells me immediately, or higher, like if you're 80 or 90, immediately that tells me that you are working within a very warm sphere of influence, right? Referrals, people that know you, past clients coming back for more, people who've already done their research online and then they reached out to you and now they want to work with you. Like you're working with a very, very warm lead pool. When you start increasing your marketing, your overall sales volume is going to go up, but the closing ratio is going to go down just because you're now working with people who aren't already 80% closed by the time they get on the phone call with you. So don't let that freak you out if that happens or if you've been through that. Okay, so let's jump into it. I said I was going to give you 5 ways to increase your closing ratio, and I plan to deliver. Number 1, have great sales scripts. Again, we talked about how you might sell like an expert and somebody else can't duplicate that. What they can duplicate is really great sales scripts. This needs to be revised and re-looked at every once in a while because things change. My scripting follows the same structure always, but every year, or even sometimes more frequently, we go in and we look at it and we're like, what's working still? What's not working? What can we adjust? How can we make this better? Can we streamline it? Can we make it more smooth? And as our audience changes, so should our script. Not major changes, but just like little dialed in tweaks. So if you don't already have a great sales script for your people, put one in place and you will watch your closing ratio go up. Side note, if you have ever felt like you're the only person who can sell for you and no one else can be successful, you need to write a script from a different perspective because the way that you're selling only works for you. Okay, number 2 is my favorite and everybody else's least favorite. It's role play. Consistently role playing your scripts is going to help everybody to get better and better at the sales process. We can bring to the table situations that we have had that we didn't know how to handle, and somebody else can give us feedback on how they would have handled it. And it just helps us all, the whole team, to be able to improve our performance. If you're a solopreneur, you don't have a sales team yet, find a power partner like a biz buddy that you can role play your scripts together and practice over and over and over again. You can never practice your script too much. If you are digging these tips, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you can get notified every time we release new content. Okay, number 3 is going to be training on overcoming objections. Your sales team and you need to be so solid in how to overcome those sales objections. If you get to the end and somebody says, oh gosh, I'd love to work with you, but I just don't know if I can afford it. And you're like, okay, well, thank you so much. I truly enjoyed getting to talk to you. No pressure from me, but if you ever change your mind, I'd love to work with you. No, we got to cut that junk out, and we have got to learn how to be confident in overcoming those sales objections. That's going to bring your closing ratio up. Okay, number 4 is a doozy. Like, I got to set the notebook down for this one. Number 4 is that you need to work on your value cost proposition. The way that most people buy is they look at what does the solution cost? And then they look at, based on number only, do they want to say yes or do they want to say no? That's like when you go to a restaurant and you look at all the prices and you pick the cheapest thing and then you say, this is what I am having for dinner, right? We do not want people thinking that way, or we're going to lose a lot of deals. So in your sales scripting, you need to have a strong value cost solution conversation. You need to help your client understand that the cost of the problem that they have is more expensive than the cost of the solution. And you need to help them see that the value of the solution is higher than the cost of the solution. So those 3 pieces are really important. This should be built into your script. Absolutely should be built into your script. If you don't have it in there, it needs to be added, and then you need to practice this over and over and over again. And you've got to be clear on it too. What is the cost of the problem that you solve? Like, how much money are they losing every month? How much energy and time and resources and relationships are, like, what is the full cost of this problem? When the cost of the problem feels really, really high, and then you bring in your cost of your solution and they're like, oh wait, that's actually a really good deal. That feels totally worth it. And then the value of the solution matches the cost of the problem. When the value of the solution feels really high, cost of the problem feels really high, and then the cost of your solution feels a little lower, it's a good place for closing. However, if the cost of your product, program, or service feels too low, they'll feel like, I have this really big problem and you can't really fix it because you just have this little solution that you can offer me. So you can actually underprice yourself and lose the deal too. So making sure that value proposition is in line is going to make a big difference. The last thing, this one I work on over and over and over again with my team. It's the very first thing we train on, and it is brought up over and over and over again, and it's mindset. Your thoughts, your emotions, your subconscious, if you're in a funk right now, like, all of those things are going to affect your ability to sell. So we are consistently working on declarations. We are consistently working on powering up. We are consistently working on increasing our energy and belief that we can be successful. And so we are constantly working on that as individuals and as a team. So there you have it. Those are my 5 steps to help you be able to increase your closing ratio. Okay, if you need more help on learning how to create your sales scripting, or you need more help on learning how to overcome objections, I've literally written all of this out inside of my book, and I'd love to give it to you for free. It's called the I'm Not a Salesperson Sales Book, How to Sell Like a Natural Even If You're Not. It is literally written for regular people who just want to kill it with sales. So go to www.salesaremything.com. You can get a free copy, and I'll also post the link down below. So now we've talked about what is considered a good closing ratio. The next video that I would recommend going to watch is how to overcome sales objections. I'll see you over there.